In the world of billion-dollar deals, trust is the most expensive currency. So what happens when the man you trust most is secretly planning to destroy you? The city skyline shimmered under the golden glow of twilight as Ethan Caldwell stepped onto the rooftop terrace of the Windsor, the most exclusive restaurant in Manhattan. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration, a milestone in his career. The deal he and Logan Pierce had worked on for months was finally coming to fruition, a merger that would cement Kingsworth Enterprises as an industry titan. Here's to the future. Logan grinned, raising his glass of bourbon. Ethan clinked his glass against Logan's, but a flicker of doubt passed through his mind. He had known Logan since childhood. Through thick and thin, they had built an empire together, and yet, something about tonight felt off. Below their table, amidst the elegant hum of business moguls and high society elites, Sophia Lane moved silently between guests, balancing a tray of drinks with practiced ease. She had been working at the Windsor for nearly a year, learning to blend into the background of the powerful men and women who dined there. But tonight, she couldn't help but notice the tension in Logan's posture, the way he checked his phone repeatedly, the hushed urgency in his voice when he thought no one was listening. Then, it happened. As she passed their table to refill Logan's glass, his voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. He has no clue. Once the ink is dry, everything is mine. I've lined up the right people, the offshore accounts are set. By the time Ethan realizes it, he'll be out. Kingsworth will be mine. Sophia froze. Her heart slammed against her ribs. The words settled in her stomach like a cold stone. Was this real? Was Logan Pierce, the trusted partner and friend, plotting to destroy Ethan? She barely managed to steady her hands as she backed away, returning to the bar in a daze. She shouldn't care. This wasn't her business. She was just a waitress. These men operated in a world far beyond her own, a world where betrayals, deals, and money ruled. Who was she to interfere? But as she set down the empty tray, her mother's words echoed in her mind, words she had grown up with. If you see a fire, do you walk away, or do you try to warn the people inside? Ethan was walking into a fire, and he had no idea. Sophia chewed her lip, her pulse hammering in her ears. What if she was wrong? What if she misheard? What if she spoke up and ruined everything? But what if she was right? Across the terrace, Ethan and Logan laughed over another drink, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath their polished exterior. Sophia took a deep breath, smoothing down her apron. She had made up her mind. She had to tell Ethan, but the question remained. Would he believe her? Sophia's palms were slick with sweat as she approached Ethan's table. Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure he could hear it. She had never spoken to a man like him before. Not in this way, not with something so important. One wrong word, one misplaced hesitation, and he would brush her off like a gust of wind. But she couldn't ignore what she had heard. Ethan glanced up as she stopped beside him. His eyes, a sharp, calculating blue, flickered with mild curiosity. He was expecting her to refill his drink, not to linger. "Excuse me, Mr. Caldwell," she said, voice lower than a whisper. "I need to speak with you. It's important." Ethan's brows knitted together. Is something wrong? Sophia's throat felt dry. She cast a glance toward the terrace doors where Logan had just stepped outside, his phone pressed to his ear. It's about the deal, about Logan. The very mention of his best friend's name sent a shadow of confusion across Ethan's face. He sat back in his chair, studying her. "Go on." She swallowed. "I overheard something. Just now. Logan was talking on the phone. He said once you signed the deal, he'd take everything. That Kingsworth would be his. He's setting you up." For a moment, Ethan just stared at her. Then, a slow exhale. "You overheard Logan saying that?" His voice was even, but his gaze sharpened into something unreadable. Sophia nodded quickly. "Yes. I wasn't eavesdropping. I swear. She hesitated, knowing how ridiculous this must sound. She was just a waitress. Why would he believe her over his childhood best friend? Ethan's jaw tightened. He looked toward the terrace doors, where Logan was still outside, pacing as he spoke. The world suddenly felt too small, too quiet. "You're sure?" Ethan asked, his voice quieter now, more serious. "I wouldn't have come to you if I wasn't." A long silence stretched between them. The weight of her words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Sophia braced herself for his disbelief. for him to laugh, to scoff, to wave her away. She expected him to be angry. What she didn't expect was doubt, because doubt had already crept into his mind. Logan had been distant lately, more impatient. And then there were the subtle changes in his behavior, the missed calls, the rushed meetings, the way he had insisted on controlling certain financial negotiations himself. Things Ethan had dismissed as stress, as the pressure of expansion. Had he been blind all along? Number Logan was his best friend, his brother in all but blood. They had built Kingsworth together. Would he really throw that all away? Ethan rubbed his temple, willing away the tension growing behind his eyes. And you're telling me this because... Sophia hesitated before answering. Because you deserve to know. Ethan studied her, searching for an angle. But there was none. He saw no greed in her eyes, no hidden motive, just raw sincerity. A waitress warning a billionaire? It was ludicrous, impossible. And yet, Logan stepped back inside, his phone call finished, and walked toward the table. Ethan's posture shifted immediately, his expression smoothing over, as if nothing had happened. Sophia took a step back, pulse hammering in her throat. Had she made a mistake? Ethan looked at her one last time, his eyes unreadable. Then, he did something she didn't expect. He gave a slow, barely there nod, a silent acknowledgement, a sign that he was listening. And that meant one thing. Logan Pierce had just become a suspect in his own best friend's mind. Ethan Caldwell had always prided himself on reading people well. It was a skill that had built his empire, knowing who to trust and who to discard. But tonight, he questioned everything. As Logan slid back into his seat, flashing that easy, confident grin, Ethan forced himself to mirror it, pretending nothing had changed. "Everything good?" Logan asked, sipping his drink. "Yeah," Ethan replied smoothly, lifting his own glass. "Just thinking about the deal. You know how it is." Logan chuckled. "Always overthinking, aren't you? That's why we make a great team. You handle the big picture, and I make sure we don't miss the opportunities right in front of us." Ethan smiled at that, a perfect lie, because right now, Logan had no idea he was already being hunted. Later that night, long after he had left the restaurant, Ethan sat alone in his penthouse office, staring at the city skyline. His mind was a battlefield, logic against loyalty, trust against evidence. His fingers hovered over his phone. Calling Logan would be pointless. If he really was plotting something, he'd never admit it. Instead, Ethan dialed another number. The line clicked almost instantly. Julian Cross was a man of few words, but those words always carried weight. "Ethan," Julian greeted. "What's wrong?" Ethan exhaled. "I need you to look into Logan Pierce, now." A pause. "Logan? Your Logan?" "Yes." Another pause, this time heavier. "What am I looking for?" Julian asked carefully. Ethan hesitated before answering. "Find out if he's been moving money, offshore accounts, secret transactions, anything. I need to know if he's been preparing for a takeover behind my back." There was no shock, no questioning from Julian, just quiet acceptance of the task. This wasn't the first time he had been asked to investigate betrayals in the corporate world. "I'll call you in 24 hours, Julian said. "If he's hiding something, I'll find it." Ethan ended the call and leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. If Sophia was wrong, then this would all be a massive overreaction. But if she was right, then Logan had already signed his own death warrant. The next day, Ethan forced himself to act normal. Meetings, emails, conference calls. Everything ran as usual. And Logan? He was the same as ever, laughing, joking, making business decisions as if nothing had changed. But now Ethan saw everything differently. The way Logan subtly steered conversations, pushing for faster contract signings, acting just a little too eager for control. Before, Ethan had trusted his intentions. Now, every word Logan said felt like a carefully crafted move on a chessboard, and Ethan had no intention of being checkmated. That night, Julian called. "I found something," he said. Ethan gripped his desk. "Tell me." Julian's voice was steady. "Logan has been funneling money into a private offshore account for the last 6 months. Small, calculated transfers, just enough to avoid drawing attention. But here's the kicker. He's also been in contact with our biggest competitor, Sterling Capital." Ethan's blood ran cold. "He's selling me out," he muttered. It looks that way, Julian confirmed. If this merger goes through, you won't just be signing a business deal, you'll be signing your own company away. Logan has positioned himself so that when the dust settles, you'll be left with nothing. Silence filled the line. Ethan could feel his pulse hammering in his throat. Do you want me to keep digging? Julian asked. Ethan closed his eyes, his decision already made. No, he said coldly. I have enough. He hung up and stood, the weight of betrayal turning into something else entirely, determination. Logan thought he was the predator, but tomorrow he would learn that he was the prey all along. The boardroom of Kingsworth Enterprises was bathed in morning light, its glass walls offering a panoramic view of the city skyline. The long mahogany table gleamed under the soft glow of recessed lighting, and at its head sat Ethan Caldwell, his fingers steepled, his expression unreadable. Across from him, Logan Pierce lounged back in his chair, exuding casual confidence. He was dressed impeccably, his custom-tailored suit as sharp as ever, his smirk just as easy as it had always been. But today Ethan saw through it all. The mask, the lies, the years of pretending. Today's the big day, Logan said smoothly, stretching his arms as if this were nothing more than another business formality. We sign, we celebrate, and Kingsworth takes its next big step into the future. Ethan offered a slow nod, his stomach coiling with tension that he refused to show. He had played along long enough. This was it. Checkmate. 10 minutes later, the conference room was filled with senior executives, attorneys, and stakeholders. The merger signing was set to proceed. Logan, ever the actor, played his part flawlessly, cracking jokes, shaking hands, playing the charming businessman. The room was his stage, and he had rehearsed this moment for months. Ethan let him have it, for the last time. As the final documents were placed in front of them, Logan reached for his pen, ready to sign what he believed was his victory. And then, before we proceed, Ethan's voice rang out, cool and controlled. I have something to share with the board. Logan froze, the pen hovering inches above the paper. Ethan turned to the lead counsel, who handed him a sleek black folder. With measured precision, Ethan flipped it open and slid several pages across the table toward Logan. Go ahead, Ethan said. Read it. Logan's smirk faltered for the first time. He picked up the papers and scanned them, his casual arrogance shifting into something else entirely. Disbelief, then dread. It was all there. Financial records of offshore transfers, correspondence with Sterling Capital, the entire web of deception meticulously unraveled. The color drained from Logan's face as he flipped through the documents that exposed every single move he had made behind Ethan's back. The room had gone deathly silent. Ethan leaned forward, his voice low, sharp, and deadly. I trusted you, Logan. His words were measured, deliberate, edged with quiet fury. We built this company together, and yet, for over a year, you've been siphoning money, plotting behind my back, and negotiating with our biggest competitor to force me out. Logan swallowed hard, panic flickering in his eyes. But still, he tried to recover, his instinct to manipulate kicking in. Ethan, Logan said, his voice forced into calmness. Whatever you think you've found, I can explain. Ethan gave a slow, cold smile. Oh, I don't need an explanation. I have facts. He turned to the executives in the room. And as of this morning, I've already frozen all offshore accounts associated with Logan Pierce. He can't touch another cent of this company's money. A murmur of shock rippled through the boardroom. Logan's mask shattered completely. You, Logan hissed, his fists clenching on the table. You think you can just do this? You think you can get rid of me? Ethan's gaze didn't waver. For the first time, Logan looked small, weak, powerless. You did that to yourself, Ethan said coolly. And now, you're finished. Logan shot up from his seat, his desperation unraveling. You think you've won? He snarled. You think freezing my accounts is enough to stop me? I have connections, Ethan. People who... Ethan stood, meeting Logan's rage with ice-cold indifference. I don't fear you, Logan. His voice was measured, unwavering. Not anymore. The security team outside had already been alerted. Within seconds, 2 guards stepped into the room, their presence unmistakable. Ethan gestured toward Logan without breaking eye contact. Escort Mr. Pierce out. The finality in his voice sent a chill through the room. Logan's jaw tightened, his shoulders rigid as the guards moved toward him. Even now, he fought to salvage his pride, but there was nothing left to save. His reign was over. As he was led from the room, Logan turned one last time, his expression twisted with hatred. "You'll regret this." Ethan held his gaze, unshaken. "No," he said simply. "My only regret was trusting you." And with that, Logan Pierce was gone. Ethan exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of betrayal lift from his shoulders. He turned back to the board members, their faces still etched with shock. He straightened his suit. "Now, let's get back to business." And just like that, Kingsworth Enterprises was his once more. The city felt different that evening, lighter, freer. The storm had passed, and for the first time in months, Ethan Caldwell could breathe. Logan Pierce was gone, stripped of his power, his wealth, and his influence. The legal team had moved swiftly, ensuring that every stolen dollar, every fraudulent deal, was unraveled before it could cause lasting damage. But despite the victory, Ethan didn't feel like celebrating. Betrayal, even when expected, left scars. As he stepped into his car, he pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts. His thumb hovered over one name: Sophia Lane. The Windsor was nearly empty when he arrived. The same rooftop terrace where everything had begun now felt strangely quiet, as if the universe had reset itself. Sophia was finishing up her shift when she saw him. Her eyes widened slightly, but she masked her surprise well. "Mr. Caldwell?" she asked, setting down a tray. "I wasn't expecting to see you again." Ethan smirked, gesturing toward an empty table. "I owe you a drink." Sophia hesitated, glancing toward her manager, but when he gave a subtle nod, she sat across from Ethan. The waiter arrived, and Ethan ordered for both of them, old-fashioned for him, a whiskey sour for her. "I'm guessing things didn't go well for Logan," she said, her voice careful. Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. "Oh, they went exactly as they should have," Sophia exhaled, leaning back. "So, it was true?" "Every word." Ethan's gaze met hers. "And you saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life." Sophia shifted uncomfortably, looking down at her hands. "I just told you what I heard. You did the rest." Ethan tilted his head, studying her. She really didn't understand what she had done, did she? "How many people do you think would have done what you did?" he asked. Sophia frowned. "I don't know." Ethan leaned forward. "Most wouldn't. They would have kept their heads down, convinced themselves it wasn't their problem. But you spoke up, and because of that, you changed everything." Sophia swallowed, a flicker of emotion passing through her eyes. "You didn't have to warn me," Ethan continued. "But you did. That kind of integrity, it's rare, and I don't forget rare things." Silence hung between them for a moment. Then, Ethan reached into his coat pocket and slid a crisp envelope across the table. Sophia blinked at it. "What is this?" "An offer," Ethan said simply. "A full scholarship. You mentioned you had to drop out of school. Now, you don't have to." Sophia's breath hitched. She shook her head. "Mr. Caldwell, I can't accept this." "You can," he interrupted, voice firm. "And you will." Sophia looked up at him, her hands trembling slightly as she held the envelope. "Why would you do this for me?" Ethan smirked. "Because I believe in repaying debts, and whether you realize it or not, I owe you more than I can ever repay." Her eyes shimmered with something she quickly blinked away. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes." Sophia exhaled a shaky breath. For the first time in years, she saw a future she thought she had lost. Finally, she smiled. "Yes." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of change. Sophia left the Windsor and enrolled back in school. True to his word, Ethan ensured that every expense was covered. But that wasn't all. One afternoon, as she was preparing for her next class, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. Sophia hesitated before answering. "Hello? Miss Lane?" a familiar voice greeted. "It's Ethan Caldwell." Sophia sat up straighter. "Mr. Caldwell? I have another offer," Ethan said, amusement in his tone. "A position at Kingsworth, part-time, flexible hours. You're good at spotting danger before it happens. I could use someone like you." Sophia's lips parted in surprise. "Are you serious?" Ethan chuckled. "Dead serious. What do you say?" Sophia thought about it for only a second before grinning. "I say yes." Months later, At Kingsworth Enterprises, Sophia stood beside Ethan in the executive conference room, no longer just a waitress, but a rising force within the company. Logan Pierce was a ghost of the past, and the future belonged to those who had earned it. As Ethan glanced at Sophia, he smirked. "You were right, you know," he said. Sophia raised an eyebrow. "About what?" He leaned back in his chair, his voice amused. "Sometimes the best business decisions come from the most unexpected places.